Ty, Lisu mi wysłał film i powiedział super content, zareaguj na streamie. Ja mówię tak, no dobra, podsyłaj. I jest to film o narkotykach, ale jednocześnie CS-ie. How drugs affect the way you play Counter-Strike. Pod wpływem jakich narkotyków, w jaki sposób zachowujesz się w CS-ie. I mnie to zainteresowało. Idziemy wziąć inspirację.
In 2024, an Australian university ran human trials to see the effect of caffeine and its influence on the average player's aim. Volunteers were given identical tasks on a software
Odpalę wam
called
napisy, bo będziecie płakać później.
Kovacs, an aim training software to complete over the course of 3 separate days.
Jak macie używać aimlapsa albo kowaka, używajcie kowaka. Jak próbowałem tego aimlapsa, to myślałem, że rozjebie mnie coś.
On arrival at the testing facility, players were given one of 3 pills, which were administered at random. One pill acted like a placebo containing no caffeine. The second contained 1 milligram of caffeine per 1 kilogram the participant weighed, and the third contained 3 milligrams of caffeine.
Jaka była ilość w typowym energetyku, jeśli chodzi o kofeinę? Bo nie pamiętam, tam trochę, w sensie inny typ kofeiny chyba jest, nie?
Per 1 kilogram. In their paper, they referred to these as
A bo to jest miligram na kilogram masy ciała?
Control 3 milligram contained 1 milligram of caffeine per 1 kilogram the participant weighed, and the third contained 3 milligrams of caffeine per 1 kilogram.
32 w energolu, okej.
In their paper, they referred to these as CON for controlled caffeine.
Ty, to jest kurwę. Miligram na kilogram masy ciała, to ja bym 74 kurwa miligramy? Tak jakby ponad 2 puszki energola zakurwić na strzała. Jaka jest, w przeciętnej puszce energetyka półlitrowego masz chyba 160, czy tam 140, już nie, 160 chyba. Zalecana dzienna dawka dla osoby dorosłej to jest chyba 400 gram, tam, no tej wartości, co w energetykach mają. To już jest trochę niebezpieczne, kurwa, 3 mg na kilogram.
1 in CAF3. And to summarize their findings, participants scored significantly better on average after they consumed CAF1 and CAF3. Static clicking scenario saw a 2.5% increase in score with CAF1, while CAF3 gave them a 2.7% increase. Tracking was even more significant. CAF2 saw a 3.4% increase in accuracy, and CAF3 made users 5.9% more accurate.
Ale zapomnieli wspomnieć, że on average, ci co brali 3 mg na kilogram masy ciała, srali do 300% częściej.
To top it all off, reaction times were
100%.
3.8% faster when the user was given CAF1.
Max na dzień to jest 400 mg. Zalecana. Ale nie miligramów?
And 6.1% faster
Może
when given
miligramów?
CAF3. However, just because you're shooting better doesn't necessarily mean you're playing better Counter-Strike or whatever game it is that you're playing. In fact, depending on who you ask, myself included, shooting is only 40% of what makes up a great Counter-Strike player. Game sense and the ability to make pre- and mid-round decisions can often dictate how good a player actually is. So does caffeine influence this?
Czy można dziś streamka bez słowa na K? No jak ciebie, Kubi, nie ma na Discordzie, to tak.
In 2015, 20 Special Forces personnel were given 800 milligrams of caffeine over the course of 3 days to test this. But before we jump into that, let's talk about the sponsor of today's video.
800 miligramów to jest double the adult
3 days to
safe
test
dose.
this. In 2015, 20 Special Forces personnel from New Zealand were given either 4 200 milligram caffeine pills during the late evening and early morning, or 4 placebo pills. They were given a multitude of different tests to include a psychomonitor or a PVT, field vigilance, and logical reasoning. Similar to the experiment in Australia, the results concluded that in all categories, personnel that received the caffeine pills scored higher than their controlled variable of no caffeine pills. And specifically during logical reasoning, personnel averaged a 0.6 second faster response time. The caveat to this experiment is that the Special Forces personnel were mildly sleep deprived. They were only provided 4 hours of sleep, which took place in the afternoon. So really what this experiment shows is that a caffeinated brain operates better than a sleep-deprived brain. However, with all that said, there is reason to believe that caffeine can potentially increase your performance in tasks such as video games. There are health concerns that go along with that though. Overconsumption of caffeine can lead to very dangerous things, which I'm sure most of you have already experienced, but it's not entirely uncommon to feel jitters, extreme anxiety, restlessness, insomnia, and a faster heart rate. And at extreme doses, there have been reports of seizures and even death. Highly caffeinated products like caffeine pills have contributed to at least 2 deaths in the United States.
Była jakaś akcja ze streamerem na Kiku, jak Kik dopiero co wchodził na rynek, podbijał, że jakiś francuski streamer robił przedłużanego i przedawkował chyba kofeinę w energetykach i zawał serca dostał, nie?
With all that in mind, the FDA claims that 400 milligrams daily is, and I quote, not generally associated with negative effects. This, of course, is dependent person to person. Myself specifically have a predisposed sensitivity to caffeine, and anything above 100 milligrams a day can often lead to some pretty bad anxiety episodes. Moving away from caffeine, I want to talk about a drug that over 1.3 billion people consume globally. That, of course, is nicotine. In 2011, a trial was done with 40 healthy
Nie, z kofeiną trzeba uważać, bo jest niebezpieczna, to jest prawda. Polecam na Holi z kodem Enigma zamówić sobie zestaw Holy Energy, jeżeli jesteście pełnoletni i chcecie sobie zaaplikować trochę kofeiny. Jest to zdrowsza alternatywa niż tradycyjne energetyki. I nie polecam przedawkowywać oczywiście zalecanej dawki dla osoby dorosłej. A pamiętajcie, że z kodem Enigma macie 10% rabatu na każde zamówienie i wychodzi wam wtedy bardzo dobra cena na półlitrową porcję, czyli taką jak duża puszka Monstera przykładowo. Po rabacie 3 zł i 6 groszy, jak zakładając, że kupicie dużą puszkę. To wtedy jakby tam jest 50 porcji, to wtedy wychodzi 3 zł 6 groszy.
Non-smokers, where they were given either a placebo or an actual
Kod Enigma przy zamówieniu, pamiętajcie.
Non-smokers, where they were given either a placebo or an actual 7 mg nicotine patch. This trial was done over 2 days, so each participant was tested both
Nie,
on
nie
the
guma balonowa.
placebo
Gumę
and
balonową
the
mieli
nicotine
na
patch.
jakiś poprzedni event, chyba Black Week.
This trial was done over 2 days, so each participant was tested both
To
on
jest ciekawe, nikotyna jakkolwiek wpływa ci na percepcję? W sensie zmieni to cokolwiek?
the placebo and the nicotine patch. The results were largely inconclusive due to the nature
Ja
of
powiedziałem
how
zdrowsza
nicotine...
alternatywa? Przepraszam, chodziło mi o lepsza alternatywa, nie zdrowsza. Jeżeli chcecie coś zdrowszego, to pijcie wodę, no kurwa, nie ma tutaj co się oszukiwać. Bo mały misklik słowny się wydarzył u mnie. Dziękuję Mateusz za poprawienie mnie, dziękuję, że na straży stoisz.
works, the test took over 90 minutes to complete, at which time the effects of nicotine have mostly worn off. But something the test did discover, however, was subjects that were given the nicotine patch were worse at orientating themselves. A test done to measure how well spatial cues influence your decision making determined that those under the influence of
A już
nicotine
zamówiłem,
scored
sorry.
8 milliseconds slower to stimuli when markers assisted in decision making. All of that to say, audio and visual cues like opponents throwing utility, firing their weapon, or just making noise in general will likely serve as less of a benefit to you if you consume nicotine as a traditional non-nicotine consumer. I did a bit more research on
Będę szczery, przez ostatnie 10 sekund się wyłączyłem,
a
kurwa.
few other studies, but the vast majority of them ran their experiments on people that already consume nicotine regularly. There is some evidence that suggests that if you consume nicotine as someone who traditionally does consume nicotine, you'll perform better at a few cognitive tasks like decision making and vigilance. That is, of course, if you have recently consumed.
Ale to mi się wydaje, że to jest bardziej kwestia takiego mentalnego placebo, że jakby powiązujesz czynność samego palenia z odstresowaniem się, dlatego jesteś lepszy, jeżeli chodzi o decision making. Tak bym strzelał, a nie bardziej efekt samej nikotyny. Nikotyna jakkolwiek wpływa na ciebie, jakby jeżeli chodzi o fizyczne zdolności? Chyba nie.
Consumed nicotine. This can largely be
No, wysłałeś mi Master Xon. Czajcie, że Master Xon mi wysyła na tym, na Instagramie, że z 6 zł na CSGO skin się zrobił Hellfire'a za 5, że 5 koła. I chciałem mu napisać enjoy, ale nie wiedziałem, czy jesteś into the meme, więc nie chciałem ci tak chamsko odpowiadać, więc normalnie odpisałem.
attributed to the fact that your brain has been wired to respond to a nicotine craving, and to satisfy that craving serves you better than how your brain reacts when you're nicotine deprived. From what I found and what I already know about the dangers and addictive qualities of nicotine, it's easy to say that if you don't usually
Wpływa w
consume
chuj? Nikotyna, czy wpływa na twoje fizyczne zdolności? Kurwa, nie powiedziałbym.
nicotine, then you should certainly stay away from it. This is
W
for
sensie wytnijmy dwie skrajności, czyli wytnijmy jakby z tego założenia osobę, która nigdy wcześniej nie paliła i zaaplikuje nikotynę po raz pierwszy i osobę, która jest uzależniona i wytniesz z jego życia nikotynę.
two reasons. If you
Bo jeżeli wytniesz odpalacza nikotynę z jego życia, to on nagle będzie wkurwiony i będzie miał głód nikotynowy, żeby... I jakby to może wpłynąć na jego performance. A osoba, która pierwszy raz zaaplikuje w jakiejkolwiek formie nikotynę da się przedawkować. Jakby czujesz jej efekt za pierwszymi razami, jak jej używasz. Potrafisz się zadżumić nikotyną tak, że czujesz się zmulony, jakbyś się najarał, kurwa, zielska.
do decide to start
Miałem
smoking,
kiedyś coś takiego, jak nie paliłem przez długi czas i wróciłem do palenia. To czułem jakby z każdym zaciągnięciem się, że jest, kurwa, jakbym zaczynał pływać.
the addictive qualities of nicotine will likely shackle you to it for the rest of your existence. And two, there is no real evidence to support the claim that nicotine itself is good for you. Nicotine is a psychoactive drug that is commonly compared to heroin and cocaine for its addictive qualities. Along with that, regardless if smoke is involved or not, there are real short-term effects that nicotine can have on your body, including increased heart rate and blood pressure. And winning at video games like Counter-Strike or any other game for that matter is not worth picking up a lifelong addiction. Let's change gears and talk about a drug that, without a shred of a doubt, negatively impacts your ability to play any competitive game, and that is alcohol. Like all segments of this video, I'm pulling a peer-reviewed study. This time we'll go back
Ej,
a little bit.
mam nadzieję, że to dobrze przetestowali, bo ja mam lekką teorię, że jeżeli jesteś na lekkiej bombce alkoholowej, takiej lekkiej, że jesteś lekko zbuzowany, to gra się, kurwa, lepiej.
Further than usual. This is because most
Nie
studies
dziura lewo type of lekka, tylko taka lekka bańka.
done recently are usually testing driving ability. This one, however, just measured raw.
Czekaj, czemu
This
gadamy
is
o
because
prowadzeniu
most
samochodu?
studies done recently are usually testing driving ability. This one, however, just measured raw reaction time and used a very simple test. In 1987, the University of Manchester gathered 40 participants who volunteered to complete a human trial to see the effects of alcohol. There was a control test where participants were given a placebo and another where they were given actual alcohol. Based on the participants' weight, they
Dobra,
changed
prawdziwe placebo alkoholowe to było jak za dzieciaka pijesz piccolo i udawałeś, że jesteś najebany, paląc kurwa paluszki z słomę.
how much they were given, all simply to achieve a slightly above legal limit of blood alcohol percentage. The test they were given was simple. You had
Slightly
four
above legal... Kurwa, to jest jakieś 2 piwa.
buttons. A, B, C,
Slightly
and D.
above legal limit, człowieku.
Whichever appeared on the
Że jakbyś w
screen
ogóle nie pił. Co to kurwa za test jest? Nie wiem, czy na polskie realia ten film jest dobry, szczerze.
in front of you, you press the corresponding button. Pretty straightforward, and so were the results. No alcohol yielded an average reaction time of 522 milliseconds, while with alcohol showed 562 milliseconds, 40 milliseconds slower on average. Not only that, but the average accuracy of selection went down by 1%.
Czekaj, bo jakby mam sprzeczne informacje. No alcohol average reaction time is 522. While with alcohol the average is 560, okay. Non-alcohol reaction time is slower? To jest typo, nie? Jakby mistype, kurwa. To nie jest slower, kurwa, tylko faster powinno być napisane. Non-alcohol reaction time. Tak, dobra, on to zjebał, dlatego ja się zdziwiłem.
40 milliseconds slower on average. Not only that, but the average accuracy of selection went down by 1%.
No
when
accuracy to bym podejrzewał, że leci w dół.
participants were intoxicated. Along with that, testers realized that while the participant was intoxicated, they tended to make repeat mistakes. And while they weren't intoxicated, there were no repeat mistakes. And keep in mind, this is only after approximately 2 drinks. This issue
Ale uwaga, mental warfare. Uważam, że to nie jest konkretnie beznadziejne, bo wyobraź sobie, masz za zadanie robić entry na mapie. Nie każdy powinien, nie zawsze, kurwa, co rundę, ale w momencie, kiedy jesteś trzeźwy i nie wyjdzie ci entry 2 razy, już mental zaczyna spadać, już widzisz, że wali cię na dupę jakiś, kurwa, 16-latek z enemy teamu, że jesteś wkurwiony, chcesz mu zajebać handlem w kręgosłup, ale jak jesteś na lekkiej bańce, takiej, że jeszcze fizycznie potrafisz się poruszać i twoja reakcja nie spada za bardzo, to twój trzeci pik będzie tak samo bezczelnie pewny siebie, jak ten pierwszy. Wiecie, o co chodzi? Ja uważam, że jest pewien stan upojenia alkoholowego, w którym grasz lepiej. Muszę jakoś przetestować tą teorię, ale jestem święcie przekonany, że tak jest.
only compounds when more alcohol is introduced. It comes as no surprise that alcohol can only hurt your ability to compete in competitive environment. So with that out of the way, let's move on to something a little more interesting. Marijuana. During the fall of 2016, the Johns Hopkins School
Mam jednego kolegę, co
of
testował.
Medicine, 4 different professors ran a
Granie
human trial
w
to
CSK,
measure
tak.
the cognitive effects of delta-9 tetrahydrocannabinol, or THC, on the brain, as well as exploring the differences between THC delivery systems. They gathered 17 healthy volunteers that had no cannabis use in the prior month and then ran 3 different tests. The first was a digital symbol substitution test, which examined processing speed, as well as a divided attention task, which focused on divided attention, and paced auditory serial addition. And this measured a few things like working memory, processing speed, and reaction time. So for the focus of the video, we'll
Memory
be
będzie
specifically
ciężkie.
looking at the results from the processing speed test, as well as the
Kolega to już kurwa przesadził? Nie. Mi się wydaje, że on też swoją teorię będzie miał.
which tests working memory and reaction time. To no one's surprise, participants that consumed smoked or vaporized THC reacted 80 to 130 milliseconds slower than their baseline.
No to
while
podejrzewałem.
consuming a placebo. And for the DSST,
Ja nie rozumiem. W Stanach Zjednoczonych, nie wiem czy zauważyliście, w Stanach, gdzie jest dozwolona rekreacyjna marihuana, ja nie wiem jakie są przepisy a propos prowadzenia samochodu pod wpływem marihuany, nie mam pojęcia jak to wygląda, ale tam czasami, tak jak mówię, w niektórych stanach, gdzie rekreacyjna jest dozwolona, niektórzy palą w samochodzie, jak gdyby normalnie jarali papierosa, kurwa. Nie można w ogóle? No to pomimo zakazów, nie wiem, czy tam jest po prostu mała łapanka tego, czy jesteś najarany, jak jeździsz autem, ale w takiej Kalifornii często to widzę, najczęściej chyba w Kalifornii, gdzie normalnie jarają, kurwa, jakby spalili fajkę na postoju i wsiadają za kółko, jak gdyby nigdy nic. I nic się nie dzieje. Gdzie wiadomo, że to są ludzie, którzy mają zbudowaną taką tolerancję, że faktycznie mogą potrafić jakby jeździć za kółkiem, chociaż kurwa nie namawiam i nigdy się nie powinno, wiadomo. Ale jak ja sobie ja jestem straszną cipą, jeżeli chodzi o jaranie. Jak ja sobie wyobrażam wsiąść za kółko najarany, no przecież przysięgam, że wolałbym być chyba skrajnie najebany, niż chociaż lekko zjarany za kółkiem. Nie można, jak cię złapią. Jak cię nie złapią, to można? No nie można, to nie można. No kurwa, kropka.
subjects who consumed THC on average identified 10 less symbols during their test, which ran for 90 seconds. This kind of experiment simply highlights the fact that playing after consuming THC in any capacity will almost certainly lower your performance. This isn't to say that I don't understand why people smoke before gaming. In fact, I absolutely understand why. A lot of people can find more enjoyment from video games in general after they smoke. Of course, this is entirely dependent on the person. But for the purpose of the video, smoking weed prior to gaming will definitely make you play worse. Will it increase your enjoyment level? Maybe. But again, that's not the purpose of the video. For our last drug
Maybe, no to kolejny test.
we'll be looking at, we have Adderall.
100% lepszy performance. Jestem święcie przekonany, nawet nie muszę kurwa czekać na wyniki.
And for those of you that don't know, is essentially just a mixture of amphetamine salts, which is usually prescribed to those with ADHD or ADHD.
No jeżeli na mecie nie strzelasz lepiej, to już nie ma dla ciebie kurwa stary ratunku, naprawdę. Jesteś skrajnie tragiczny, zostaw tą grę i już nie odpalaj więcej.
Adjacent
I sobie
disorders.
pogradziłem kurwa w Dark Soulsy.
Now, it's no mystery that this mixture of chemicals the pharmaceutical industry calls Adderall works as it's intended. There'd be no other reason for licensed practitioners across the world to be prescribing patients with attention disorders this drug. Because there are so many instances of pros abusing this drug across every esport, not just Counter-Strike, we'll be taking a closer look at those and also what impact it had, and what these players said about the effect it had on them instead of just clinical trials. Arguably the most notable instance of Adderall being abused in professional esports was during 2015 with the Counter-Strike team Cloud9. On the 14th of July 2015, during an interview with Bohan Govindasamy, aka Launders, Corey Simphis Friesen, a member of Cloud9 at the time, admitted, "I don't even care. We were all on Adderall. I don't even give a f***. It was pretty obvious if you listen to the comms." And here are the comms in question.
Yeah, we should definitely keep buying.
Car, dinked him, he fell back. I raped him.
Grabbing bomb.
We have banana control.
Yo guys, I'm gonna go in like a fucking...
And we also
I to jeszcze mecz na Virtusów wybrali, czajcie.
Yeah, we have really good timing.
Czajcie, Shroud na Adi sobie siedział normalnie, kurwa.
Okay, are you guys going?
Tweaking as a motherfucker, kurwa, trzyma kąt.
Yeah.
Shazzy,
Give
smoke
us
my
smoke.
side. Smoke my left.
Give us
my
smoke.
right.
Coming up right now.
He's throwing
I'm
it.
smoking.
Pit, under.
Pit really hurt.
Hit dead.
Side.
Center side.
Close left.
Well, two side.
Oni nie wjebali tego meczu w ogóle?
Sandbag.
I'm stuck on something. That was you.
You still
I
there?
was stuck on you.
One more with sandbag.
Later in the interview,
Dobra, Shroud to z kolei brzmi jakby był najarany, kurwa, a nie na Adderallu.
he even went as far as saying everyone does Adderall. This undoubtedly altered the stance of tournament organizers like ESL, the tournament Simphis was referring to, as well as ESIC, the Esports Integrity Commission. On the 1st of January 2016, ESIC implemented anti-doping measures where they explicitly banned all ADHD stimulant medication. Of course, they also followed up with Article 4 in their anti-doping code that allows players who are prescribed ADHD medication to still be able to compete and take their
No
medication.
właśnie, a to nie jest jakoś bardzo łatwo sfejkować i tak? Pewnie kurwa i tak połowa sceny lata na tym tak.
Interestingly enough, in 2004, WADA, or the World Anti-Doping Agency, banned amphetamines from competition, which, keep in mind, WADA for the most part sets the industry standard for what is and what is not allowed in competition with traditional sports. But Friesen wasn't the only esports athlete to come clean about Adderall abuse. In 2021, Kyler Garland, or Huke, a professional Call of Duty player who now plays for Optic Techs, admitted to using Adderall during his team's win in 2020 Call of Duty League Championship. In great detail, Kyler described the negative impact the substance had on his life, claiming that it changed how he viewed the game he loved, as well as a shift in personality, saying that he felt anger instead of joy.
Ale no, byłbym wkurwiony, gdybym miał ćpać Adderall, żeby lepiej strzelać i później wchodzę sobie do gierki zagrać casualowo nawet i widzę, że moje reakcje nie są tak szybkie, nie jestem aż tak skupiony jak powinienem. Wkurwiałoby mnie to, dobiłoby mnie to chyba, gdybym celowo miał brać, żeby grać lepiej i później patrząc się na swój performance na trzeźwo.
While he played. He also went as far as claiming that there is a serious problem with the COD industry in regards to stimulant abuse. This fortunately inspired a few other pros to come clean
Nie no, co ty?
Nie
Nigdy
wiem.
nie słyszałem o tym, żeby jakikolwiek gracz Call of Duty ćpał.
their stimulant use. In Kyler's following season, he spent
To
the
be
entire
so fast,
time
no,
getting
yes.
clean. Unfortunately, around the same time, he was dropped from his team just to later be picked up by another organization and then let go largely due to rumors surrounding potential psychedelic abuse. Since this time, no drug screening requirement of any capacity has been implemented in the Call of Duty League, whether it be random screening or mandatory tests. Nothing. And when the Washington Post did an article
Przecież tam
titled
by każdy był zjarany, gdyby oni tam mieli jakieś testy.
"Nobody talks about it because everyone is on it," they directly asked Epic Games and Activision Blizzard. They promptly provided the league policies and then refused to give any further comments regarding drug testing. Timo Kutunen, a professional Overwatch player, said live on stream he believes at least 20 people in the league are abusing Adderall for competitive advantage. Jimmy Marino, former Gears of War pro, said that half the league is using it. Adam Sloss, a Call of Duty World Champion, even said, "Nobody talks about it because everyone's on it." League of Legends, Valorant, Fortnite, Call of Duty, Overwatch, and even Rocket League do not have a pro league that supports drug testing for its players. Counter-Strike is the only esport that tests for
Czy to jest boxing?
performance-enhancing drugs like Adderall. And since their implementation of random drug testing, they have had
Was
zero
your New Year's resolution? Of 1280 by 960? It was like this for 7 years?
positive results. It's clear that esports as an industry has a lot of growing to do in this category. Young adults and even teenagers are being exposed to a sport where the status quo is to take unprescribed amphetamines to gain an advantage, all while those in charge of their respective pro scenes stand idly by, while countless players like Kyler undergo life-altering experiences with these powerful substances that will likely have lifelong effects. But to answer the question, how does Adderall affect the way you play? Well, you can expect to feel restless, have trouble sleeping, decreased appetite, faster heart rate, anxiety, irritability, paranoia, and even hallucinations.
Dobra,
along with
dobra,
a whole
tyle pierdolenia, a nie ma nic o wynikach, jak lepiej się gra po Adderallu.
slew of other potential side effects that are likely to arise for someone who isn't prescribed this medication for health reasons and isn't under the direct supervision of a licensed practitioner. But does it make you play better? Who knows?
Oh.
All we do know is that teenagers and young adults across every video game, not only Counter-Strike, are willing to try and do anything they can to get a competitive advantage. That's why it's the industry's responsibility to enforce these drug policies until there is definitive proof. Until then, the same will continue for guys like Kyler. And if you're looking for some kind of edge in your respective video game, just drink coffee.
No nie podał wyników, skurwysyn, bo wiedział, że się lepiej gra. Jest lepiej, bo brałem, na 100% jest lepiej. No ja mówię, nie musiałem nawet na wyniki czekać, ale... No ale co, no ale chuj, no. Wiemy, że jaranie na pewno nie pomaga. Kiedy oficjalny test? A za tydzień ogarniemy coś, zobaczymy. UR statystyki, no właśnie, no nie zrobił, bo wiedział, że zbyt bardzo będzie to zachęcać. And if you're looking for some stuff, here's my dealer's contact number. Ta, powinien Telegrama podlinkować, kurwa, z kodem rabatowym, bez kitu, no. To by było zajebiste. Ale co, no niestety nie ma.